friends, it's Alexa from Alexa Loves Books, and I'm back in front of my shelves, in case you didn't see that. It's been a while since I'm back here because I have been enjoying our little brick wall area there that we set up for my birthday party, but I decided I missed my shelves, so we're back. Anyway, today I'm going to be sharing my second wrap-up for the month of August, and this is the end of the month wrap-up. And in this video, I will be talking about all the books I read in the second half of the month. Also, ignore the sounds in the background, that's just the laundry dryer running, so, you know, real life, gotta do what you gotta do. I actually managed to read quite a few books in the second half of the month. I think I was just in this mindset where I was really determined to get through a lot of the review books that were on my pile. And I did manage a good chunk of it. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to talking about the books I read in the month of August. The first book that I read in the second half of the month is a book called Cook, and it's by Christopher Vick. This is the story of a boy who moves with his family back to like Cornwall, if I remember correctly. And he starts to fall in with this new crowd of people who are all surfers, and they're determined to find this huge monumental wave. I think it's called the Devil's Horns in the book. It's about surfing, but it's also about growing up, and yeah, that's pretty much all I can tell you about it. I think it's always interesting to read about a sport that I know nothing about, and surfing is something like I don't know how to surf. I've never tried surfing in my life. I'm very intimidated and I probably won't do it, but so that part was fascinating. And I think it's always interesting to read like a coming of age growing up story, so that part conceptually was really like interesting to me. The thing was, it wasn't quite what I wanted from it. I felt like it was a little underdeveloped, especially in terms of the characters. I just felt like very weirdly disconnected from the story, which was rather unfortunate. I still managed to finish it. I was kind of disappointed in this one, and I ended up giving it a 1.75 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read after Cook was a book called Poppy by Mary Hooper. It feels like it's two separate stories. It's about Poppy and about her role as a maidservant in a rich family's house, and this kind of romantic feelings that develop between her and one of the sons of the rich family. But this is set against the backdrop of World War I, and of course the son has to enlist as a soldier, and Poppy actually decides to become a volunteer nurse. I actually like this book. Like, I thought it was really interesting to read about Poppy becoming a volunteer nurse. I thought the whole like backdrop of World War I and like how the author chose to portray it was really pretty good. Like, it was very compelling. I always find it interesting to read different perspectives on, you know, such a monumental event, and I thought that was great. I just was not happy about the romantic plot of this book, and the romance is actually supposed to be one of the central tenets of it. I just did not at all ship the romance. I did not even find it believable, and it just annoyed the hell out of me whenever we had to go back and think about the romance and focus on the romance, and I was just like, no, I don't want to hear any more about this. I don't know, it got in the way of how much I would have enjoyed this book otherwise, because I think I would have enjoyed it a whole lot more without that. I ended up giving this book a 2.75 out of 5 stars. The next book I read has one of the loveliest covers I've seen in a while, and that book is Tell Me Something Real by Kalia Devlin. And this book is basically the story of 3 sisters. They're trying to deal with the cancer that threatens to take their mother away from them. It's a family drama basically that centers around those 3 sisters. Here's the thing. I liked the story in this one. I thought the whole like sister relationship and their family dynamic with the parents and the sisters was really interesting. I like that each of the sisters felt like different individuals, although we really only get to know the main narrator, the middle sister. You kind of get a sense of who the older sister is and what she's like, and the same goes for the younger sister. And I thought that was great. I thought like the way the story unfolded was pretty interesting. I like how different it was from most books I've read, like that kind of have like that similar like someone in the family is sick storyline. The one thing that made this book kind of like go meh for me in my rating was the romance. Again, I did not like the romance in this book, and I didn't think it was a necessary part of the story. Like, I feel like even if you had taken that out, I think it would have turned out even better, honestly, and I would have liked this book so much better. I was very torn about how to rate it because I really liked the story, but I just could not get behind the romance. I ended up rating this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is The Lovely Reckless by Cami Garcia, and this is one of my Friends with Arcs reads with Rachel from Hello Chelly. Frankie ends up moving in with her dad because she's been haunted by the death of her boyfriend, the murder of her boyfriend actually, and she just needs like a new start. And she ends up going to a new public school, and at the public school she meets this kind of bad boy type named Marco. Their worlds kind of collide, and Marco has some secrets of his own. It's very similar in tone and in subject matter to a Katie McGarry book, and I think that's what drew me to it initially. I enjoyed it for the most part. I thought it was fun to read about Frankie. I liked all her friends as well. I thought that was interesting. I thought the relationships explored in the book were also interesting, and even the setting itself was pretty fascinating. The story was really compelling, but it got to a point where it became a little too TV drama for me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I just didn't want that to happen with this book, and it did. The more I read and the closer I got to the end, I was kind of okay. And the ending was kind of really quickly tied up and everything, which was not something that I felt was a good fit for this book, and I ended up giving this one a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is actually a book that I really enjoyed, The Thousandth Floor by Catherine McGee, and it's basically like Gossip Girl set in the future. The characters in this book all live or work in a building that has 1,000 floors, and it basically is like the entirety of New York City covered by that building, and they all have different stations in life. This basically is like a story that's full of secrets, full of drama, full of scandals, and it all intertwines together. It's told in multiple perspectives, and I didn't really have a hard time keeping those perspectives separate. I thought the characters were pretty okay. I was most fascinated by Eris, who I think is pretty interesting as a character compared to the others. I felt like I really got to know her a little bit, and I like that a lot. I was okay with the plot of this. I think it's because I went into it expecting a Gossip Girl type story, and that's pretty much what I got, so can't complain about that. But what I was surprised about was the world building, because I thought it was so interesting. I liked seeing the way the author took all these things I knew, or all these things that maybe other people had been dreaming up, or concepts that I might have seen in films or television or stuff like that, and she kind of brought them to life, and it was really great. I thought she did a really good job with that, because I could actually picture most of these things in my mind. But I personally really enjoyed it. I'm probably gonna have to check out the sequel when it comes out. I gave that one a 3.25 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was As I Descended by Robin Talley. It's basically a Macbeth type story that's set at a boarding school, and there are these two girls who are best friends and together, and they decide to take matters into their own hands so that one of them will succeed in winning a scholarship that will allow her to go to college with the other girl. It was very eerie to read this book. I thought it was really the imagery and the creepiness of it was really spot on. But then again, I'm kind of like a scaredy cat, so you don't have to take my word for it. I thought it was pretty fascinating. I felt like it was a touch underdeveloped for certain characters. The main two girls were definitely interesting to read about, and I felt like I got to know them. I believe their names were Maria and Lily, and I thought they were both very interesting to read about. I didn't really particularly care for any of the other secondary characters that featured in the book. I thought the plot was fascinating. I thought the world building was pretty unique and pretty strong, because I felt really creeped out. And I found it so different from anything I've read in a while, which was a good thing in my book. I always wished though that I could connect personally with the characters, especially the main characters, and that wasn't the case for me, so I didn't necessarily love it as much as I would have liked to. But I ended up giving that one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. This book is basically about witches. It's about a girl named Alejandra. She is born into a family of brujas, or witches, and she just thinks that the power has been such a curse for her family, and she wants to get rid of hers. So on her death day, which is the day they celebrate the power coming into a young bruja's life, she decides to enact this spell to get rid of the powers, only to banish her entire family to the underworld, or I think it's called Los Lagos. So she's on a mission to get them back. I just found the mix of cultural elements so fascinating in this story. It's very well constructed as a plot, and and the world itself, and even the structure of being a bruja or a brujo. I thought that was all really well constructed. I actually really enjoyed the story, even though I found it to be slightly too convenient for my characters. They kind of got into a lot of really difficult situations and then kind of conveniently found a way out of them. So that was a little too neat in my opinion. I didn't really connect to Alejandra as a character or to anyone else in that story, but it didn't really matter because the plot was what was driving me forward. I actually really enjoyed Labyrinth Lost, and I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is one of my favorite books of this year, and that book is This Adventure Ends by Emma Mills, and this book was so good. It's basically about a girl named Sloane, and she and her family have just moved to Florida. She's basically sort of a loner until she actually makes friends and falls in love with this particular group of friends who have known each other for a long time. And it's about her life and how it changes as her friendships and relationships develop with these people and as time passes by. And I just, oh my god, my description of it is not even adequate. But I literally fell in love with this book. I thought Sloane was such a great character. I could relate to her so much. I could see a lot of myself in her, especially my teen self. And I think that that's a wonderful thing that the author managed to capture that voice so well. I also think she captured the nuances of all sorts of relationships really well too. Like, she was able to capture what a parent-child relationship can be like, or what a friendship can be like, or what a budding romance could be like, and what a sibling relationship could be like. And it was just so well done. All of those things felt so authentic to me. I really felt for these characters, and I fell in love with all of them. Secondary, primary, Sloane herself. It was just like it was so good. I got so emotional reading this one. I actually like had tears like falling down my face when I was finishing this one, and it was really good. I do feel like there is one aspect of it that kind of gets a little pushed to the wayside, and that is Sloane's singing, which you will read about in the book. Other than that, I really can't complain about this book, and I actually gave it a 4.75 out of 5 stars, but I did round it up to 5 stars because I loved it that much. The next book that I want to talk about is a book by an author that I absolutely love, and that book is Leave Me by Gail Forman. This is her first adult novel, and it's basically the story of a woman who leaves her life behind after she suffers a heart attack. She leaves her husband and her kids and her job and her life in New York and escapes. I, as always, really think Gail has a way with words. I love the way she writes. Her work is always so compelling and so easy to read at the same time. I think she tackled a theme that is relevant to a lot of people. I just let her lead me through it while I was reading the book, and that worked out really well. I ended up finding it like really compelling. Even though I didn't necessarily always agree with the main character and how she felt, or even like the people around her and what they did and how they acted, I actually really enjoyed the story. It's not my favorite of Gail's work, I will say that, but I mean, it's pretty good. And I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the last 2 books that I read in the month of August, well, one I'm read and one I'm reading, are The Queen of the Tearling and The Invasion of the Tearling. And these are both part of the Queen of the Tearling series, and the third book, The Fate of the Tearling, is coming out in November, I think. The series centers on a main character named Kelsey, who has been hidden all of her life because she is actually the heir to the Tearling throne, and she ascends to her queenship in this very first book, and she's faced with the challenges of being a monarch and ruling a country and making sure that her people are taken care of. I know that some people don't love these books, and I get that. I can see why. The writing style is not for everyone, and even like the world building itself might not actually strike everyone's fancy. But personally, I loved this book. The world building was interesting to me. I think the story itself is really compelling because it's just this girl who is thrust into this position of like power and responsibility, and she has to take all of that onto her shoulders, and she's only 19. I think in the end, what really makes this story for me are the characters. I have so much love for these secondary characters in this book. Her Queen's Guard, her Arliss, her Treasurer, Andali, her Lady's Maid, the Fetch, like all these characters really have come to life for me, and I love them. But Kelsey herself is already amazing. I think she's such a great main character because she's powerful and she's strong in a way that you can't contest really, because she endures so much for the sake of her crown. She tries the best she can to make the smartest decisions, and she's always thinking of other people before thinking of herself. And I like that she's not perfect because she does struggle at times. She's just so great to read about. And I gave the first book, upon finishing my reread, a 4.75 out of 5 stars. And the second book, which I am like, where am I? I'm like halfway, I'm a little more than halfway. I should be done with this tonight. I'm filming this the night before this goes up. And I'm probably gonna give this one a 4.75 out of 5 stars as well. Those are all the books I read in the second half of August. If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And And if you're interested in reading any of them or have any more questions, feel free to ask as well and I will answer as soon as I can. All of my other social media links are down below and I'd love it if you follow me there. I'd also really like it if you like this video, if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys soon for another video. Bye!